We are. It's always great to meet another Mitch.
Yep. I only knew one the whole time I was in like elementary or high school. I think I only knew one other. In 12 years.
Yeah. Well, this one is young enough to be your son, I think. So.
Well, that's a ever growing number of people. So.
Right.
Well, I understand that too. But yeah, we got two Mitches on the show today, so that's going to be interesting. So we'll say Mitch P and Mitch G. So MP and MG.
There you go.
Yeah,
awesome.
We'll do those nicknames for a little bit, so nobody's confused listening. Not that I think they could, but anyway.
Or you could just say Mr. Pangallo.
Established.
Whoa.
You are a guest.
Yeah.
The respect you duly deserve.
Yes, sir. No, we've, as we're continuing to record here, we've known MP. Like, I was getting ready to go, like, we've known Mitch for a while. And everybody's like, wait a minute, which one? We've known Mr. Pangallo for quite a while. 2 years. We were met. How did that happen? Was it just LinkedIn?
I think it was LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, did I do something weird? And I was just like, hey, what's up? And you were like, well?
Not that I can recall. When I was a founder in Happy Hour, I went and connected with all Louisville founders I could find. So it could have been I found your founder title, or I saw a post that someone liked by you. And if I saw Louisville founder, I wanted to connect. That's ultimately probably how we connected. And then and it's also I connected with the founders of Forecastr too. So
okay, yeah. Okay, well that makes sense. That sounds about right, because I don't really do the whole LinkedIn thing where I'm like, hey, derp, what's up? And because I mean that gets ignored. Yeah. There's people that are like, oh, I got a response rate, and I'm like, but did anything happen after?
Yeah, it's not about small talk.
Yeah. Just kind of like walking into a room saying it's up, and then it's like, okay, cool. I went to a room and I said hello to someone, and then what?
Yep.
As an owner, I'm like, and then, know what I'm getting at? And then, it's like a drive-through.
Yep.
So, anyways, we're waiting on Robert to tell me when to go. We're good to go. All right. Well, welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast, everybody.
I thought I told you.
You did. You did.
You may have, and I just was like in the middle of a thought or scatterbrained because I'm on Red Bull right now.
This is staying in then.
All right, cool. Leave it. That's good. That's good. This episode is not sponsored by Red Bull, but I'd love it if
it is certainly powered by Red Bull.
Yeah, it's powered by it, and I'd love it if they would do that one day. So anyways, this episode of the NerdBrand Podcast, we're talking TOFUs and BOFUs and MQLs. Oh my, yeah, and play that back and go like, what? But we got a guy here that can explain all of that. And so on this episode of the NerdBrand Podcast, we welcome Mitch Pangallo from Forecastr, a local startup in Louisville, Kentucky, making some waves. Forecast your revenue, expenses, new hires, your exit, your runway with confidence. Be prepared to impress investors and grow faster. So, sir, the floor is yours to dive deep into discuss, introduce yourself and Forecastr.
Awesome. Cool. Well, you nailed the pitch. That's wonderful. If I could packet that and start every discovery call with that, I'd be great. Yeah.
Congratulations on your new position.
Oh, yeah. I got a new job.
So yeah, TOFU and BOFU. Right. Yeah. TOFU, top of funnel, BOFU, bottom of funnel. It's from a super high level. So we'll get into that, but Mitch Pangallo. I'm at Forecastr now, a local startup here in Louisville. We do financial models for startups. So we help founders get great financial models. They can build 5-year projections that ultimately, like you said, can help impress investors or help them run their business better. You can think of it like a dashboard for a car, right? So I got started at Forecastr back in August of last year, so almost there a year. And my come to faith with financial modeling was with Happy Hour, my previous startup. So I was a founder in Happy Hour. It was a mobile app where you could find happy hours and specials around you at a very simple level. So it was a mobile app, a hard one to monetize, right? Bars and restaurants don't want to pay you. Users don't want to pay you to save money. So ultimately, our financial model never looked amazing to me. We were able to raise money. We brought on angels, got a ton of users, but it's one of those brands that probably needed to be built in Silicon Valley with a crap ton of money to be successful. Mm-hmm. Over the course of about a year and a half with my time working on Happy Hour, I sat down with my model and had to come to faith, I don't know if this is the type of business I want to start. I want to start a business that can get to net alive or profitable very fast, being a finance guy, being a finance and sales guy. So ultimately, I sat down with my model one day. I was like, wow, this is so powerful. I realized that like this is probably isn't the right business for me to run. I reached out to the guys at Forecastr because I knew what they were building. I thought every founder needs to have this experience, whether it be in the first week or the first year of their business or down the road. So ultimately, that's where I joined Forecastr, and that's me today. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. I've always been like, startup is a cool thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, I think even with us as a brand agency, like, oh, you guys are a startup. Well, no, we're not. We're an agency. We're not really a startup. We started a business.
Yeah.
We are not a startup. That's very big. There's a differentiator. But I have come across startups that are afraid to go and get capital. They're afraid to go and get an investor. So from our angle, it is the message, it's the creative, it's that 6 seconds you have to impress and show off and sound legitimate and professional, depending on who you're going in front of. And you guys bring in the numbers that you can actually see, and you're not just randomly Shark Tanking it and crossing your fingers and walking out of the room going, dun, 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 whatever the music is. I'm not gonna mimic the music because I'm really scared that channels are just gonna like mute that part because of the way AIs are now.
Well, because you do it so well, they're going to get it right away.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I can hum a tune and to nothing.
I mean, the interesting thing is, and it's like what you said. What Forecastr does, it gives people that real ammunition. They have the idea, they have the concept, which may be perfectly solid, but you help them build like the number infrastructure, if there's such a terminology, that gives it weight, that makes it feasible, that makes it look attractive, that makes it look like, yes, this is something that has legs that can stand and grow.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things, because I actually have, I think you did a demo with me.
Yeah.
And so I have seen it, and I love this. It's really sort of like one of these setups for those listening and kind of piqued interest into this thing, because you really should look into it. As the CEO of NerdBrand, I'm basically like the controller. So I've got my hands on the finances. Like talking with my CPA this morning was, mildly okay. But it's got this slider on it. And you can slide it up to go and look at like we're going to be in a few months to a few years, and you can just kind of go nuts in a way with it. And it's sort of like kind of crazy, but it's great because a guy like me, many people are probably doing it through either, sadly, some software like QuickBooks, or they're trying to do it through Google Sheets like I do. And, you can get so far with that. But when you're talking about startups that need major capital, you can't do that. That's a really bad idea. Because even when I do Google Sheets, I mean, I could be off $1,000, which sounds like, well, Jason, you're screwing up. But no, I mean, it depends on the business.
Right.
But yeah, I like the accuracy of it. I like the comfort it gives to kind of know. It's better than trying to forecast the weather right now. Honestly, it really is. I would trust Forecastr with the weather probably more than I would.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, Mitch, I love that you say ammunition, because I say that all the time. I tell people it's great ammo to have in your arsenal. And then too, about like your pitch deck should be the emotional attachment. Like you always have to get investors or customers. Like your first customers, you have to pitch like an investor. Your first employees, you have to pitch like an investor, especially in a startup where you're pitching a high growth company. So your pitch deck is there, get them emotionally attached, but then, the next question is always going to be, well, what's the brass tacks? What's the business model? Like, how do we all make money here?
How do you pay for it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's that second stage of that conversation, and it's usually the one that gets you the yes or the no. It's usually one of the last things they see before they're fully bought in. So it really is super important.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that when Google started, they struggled with. I mean, they kind of looked at a platform. They're like, okay, we want to do a search engine. We don't want to do a portal, because that's all the web was. It was just portals and ads everywhere. And that's what makes money. So I kind of like what you just said is kind of what Google had to sit and go through. It's like, okay, how do we take this and make money off of it? Yeah. Because honestly, if they did not figure that out at that time, we'd be Yahooing everything right now.
What a world.
Yeah. But is that one small change right there? Because of that, and thinking about that is what can get you to, success or failure. I mean, the world, it's like, I like what you said. It's like getting down to the brass tacks. At the end of the day, everything's got to come down to how much, and because you get an expense or you've got like profit that you hope you make. So yeah, it's a really fascinating. I love it as a tool. I think it's an awesome app. So, but anyways, so I appreciate you just briefly touching on what a TOFU and a BOFU is, and I'm going to keep saying it.
I thought we were going out for Japanese or something.
Yeah, I did too. I was like, yeah, we're going to talk about that, but then you're like top of funnel, bottom of funnel. So, did you just say what a MQL was, just for the people to hear?
MQL is a marketing qualified lead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you dive into details of what you would consider? I guess it's kind of hard to do that broadly, but what do you consider marketing qualified? Yeah,
it can be different for different businesses. For us, a marketing qualified lead is someone who visited your website, someone who showed some bit of interest in your brand. And that's, you can either retarget them, you can put them into they're usually not in your funnel yet. A sales qualified lead is usually someone who's in your funnel, but it's usually that first step of like showing interest, and maybe they should go into your funnel or your pipeline. And then your funnel being the first stage, being the top of funnel. That's like MQLs, and it's the first time you can cut out some MQLs, put them in that funnel, and then your pipeline determines like who stays in bottom of funnel into your final customers. So.
Yeah. Being a guy that has done front end WordPress development, I see MQL, and you drive me nuts with that when you say that, because it's SQL to me. That's like.
Completely different thing.
Yeah, because that's what I say. Even though it's not all there as an acronym, it's like I see MQL and I'm like MySQL, and it's like. So, but anyways, you consider yourself in sales mostly, or do you consider yourself more in consulting when you get into a room with people about this?
Right now, sales, but we're like an advisory sale. So along with the platform, we do like we help companies build the model as well. So we play that advisor role. So kind of both. Like I'll sit down with a founder and I'm talking to them like an advisor. We have free materials. Like everyone that hops on our call with us is not a good fit for Forecastr. And if they're not, we'll give them free templates. Like we'll give them free stuff and say, hey, continue to build, come back to us when you're at this stage or when you've done this. So we definitely play both roles. We're a very founder first company. And that's all part of our brand. Like we went through Techstars, and their whole mantra is give first. And if you do that, you build great relationships, great partnerships. And ultimately, like that is the core of our funnel. Like you can break down our entire funnel into a single thing, and it is the trusted referral. And that trust is built on our brand, on our relationships. So we play both that advisor and, of course, we're always selling.
Yeah, that's something I think we can relate to, because when we get in there, it's I think Mitch. Let me address Mitch as in MG, Mitch Gregory, who is our creative director at NerdBrand. We've talked about like how we act like a doctor, and we're going in trying to diagnose the patient, and that's
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, something MP just said that I think is very important. As far as being a kind of a giving organization, that builds trust. It tells people you're not just here to get your hand in my pocket. You want to build a relationship, and you really care about helping me. As a type of consulting kind of business, like we sort of are. I mean, we need customers to divulge to us a lot of things about them and their business. Otherwise, we can't help. Well, how do you get them to do that? They have to trust you. Then you have to sincerely be willing to give up a little bit of yourself to build that trust. So I find it interesting that you guys are very much in that same kind of mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just communications. I mean, being able to communicate to the prospect client, whatever the relationship is, whatever status it's at, is just having a good line of communication and a good relationship. And that's where it starts to show, and everybody says it's all about relationships. It's really easy to put that as a tagline.
Sure.
Really hard to do.
Yeah.
I was sort of taught like a couple things, like I've talked about before on this podcast, about when you're in sales, like just try to focus on making them curious about what you do and just let them approach you. The other thing is like too, and it happened to me this week, was there was no sale that was closed, unfortunately, but I was walking to the parking lot and these guys just kept following me. So our conversation was very different going to the parking lot than it was in the meeting earlier. And, I always like that, because it's always like that. You get to know the person a little bit. Because I've had a couple this week where it's like, did you see Thor? Like, I've heard enough not to. I don't know if, are you a fan?
I am. I'm a big MCU fan.
Are you?
Yeah.
Have you seen Thor?
Have you seen it yet?
I have not seen it
yet. Have not? Okay. Mitch has.
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Yeah, our Mitch has.
Because
I haven't.
I'm eat up. Anybody that knows me knows I'm eat up. I'm a Marvel guy to the core.
Yeah.
Down to the been read the comics since I was 12.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think we could probably switch the conversation then to this without spoiling anything, because I haven't seen it either. So I don't. I think it'll be safe, and you won't get mad at me,
Okay.
MP. It's weird calling you that, but okay. So I looked at the trailers and the average, because being ad guys, and this is kind of going back into NerdBrand's really genesis of the podcast is like the branding and the nerd culture, right?
Sure.
I started looking at all the advertising for this movie. It's confusing. Like I would see the taglines they'd throw up, and then I would have a conception that, okay, this is what I'm going to experience. And then I'm hearing people come out of the theater going like, well, I mean, when you start the movie review with, well, you know.
I mean, I've known, and I'm probably harder on this stuff than most people because I'm such a fanboy. Sure. But it is kind of surprising. It's probably a movie that's going to appeal more to the non-hardcore fans than it is the hardcore fans like me.
Yeah.
But this is only like it's been a week.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I'm getting a breaking news notification.
Yeah, so James Gunn confirmed about like yesterday, I think it was, that Thor will also not be featured in Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Oh, well.
Oh.
Which is like ridiculous considering how much they've pushed, with at the end of phase 3 with Endgame and everything else to like, hey, Thor's a Guardian now. Then I've also heard too that like the Guardians really weren't featured that long in
they weren't
in the Thor movie.
Yeah.
I told somebody that they might as well just put up cardboard stand-ups of each of the characters in the background, and that would have sufficed because it accomplished about the same.
Well, I watched Fat Man on Batman last night, and Kevin Smith himself was like, saying how Chris Pratt looked really scrawny and giving him a sandwich. Like, he did look, a bit lighter.
Yeah. I don't know how much of that has maybe something to do with the fact that maybe he was shooting this at the same time he was shooting the Terminal List, which I just saw
Fantastic.
on Amazon. It's the best thing Chris Pratt has been in, and he's amazing in it. I mean,
really?
he shows more depth, and part of this is a credit to the direction on the script. But there's so much depth to his character. It's a great miniseries. I highly recommend.
Isn't that fascinating? Okay, so you brought up Robert, phase 3, all the excitement. Have y'all noticed, since we're all MCU fans?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? What's the point of phase 4?
Phase 4 makes zero sense. Like, I don't know what's going on there.
There's no connective tissue.
Like, has anybody shown up? Like, we had Thanos, like Avengers, like jump, like, hey, purple guy.
Well, I mean,
now we got nothing.
Well, Loki, like to me, Loki was the most exciting part about Phase 4. Is like, hey, here's the introduction of kind of this true multiverse,
Right.
and what's his name? I can't think about the main villain. Kang.
Kang.
Kang gets introduced, and you're like, oh well, it's been a couple years now, and there's been a couple more Marvel movies, and there hasn't been like, they were teasing Thanos for
from the beginning.
Years,
for
years.
Yeah, you knew what the Infinite, like by now, if you look at like the traction, and I'm kind of repeating what I think either Mark Bernardin or give a shout out to James Johns out there, but we kind of knew like really up front all about the stones. We already had a hint of what was happening. We had Thanos, and we've had literally nothing at this moment. Like, I thought for a minute the 10 Rings was going to be it.
Well, there's there's some allusions in a general sense to the multiverse, but even in that, like in the current Thor movie, I'm struggling to find any references to the multiverse in it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like I said, with the first 2, even 3 phases, there was always that connective tissue that always kind of either loosely or tightly, depending on the film, gave you a sense of continuity that you were seeing one part of an unfolding larger story.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't have that now. I'm wondering if this is a byproduct of the influence of Disney now that Disney is in full ownership of Marvel Studios, that something in that background is why things are being done the way they're being done now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, MP, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've watched everything up to was it God of Thunder? Is that the newest Thor? What is it called? Or is it Lord of
Love
Thunder?
and Thunder.
Love and Thunder. Yeah, I've watched everything up into that, and you're right. There's no continuity between the last couple years. The Wise, I don't know. Could very well be Disney. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I have a hard time thinking of it as a coincidence because it seems to line up with, okay, once Disney kind of took over and fully folded Marvel into the family. It seems like things started getting a little bit different. Then you've got the whole TV side of things, the streaming shows and stuff.
Most of those shows have been great, though, in my opinion. They're just not connected. There's just as we've been saying this whole time. There's no story.
They've been kind of hit or miss with me. I haven't even bothered to watch Ms. Marvel. It doesn't for one thing. That I guess I'm probably not part of the key audience for that show.
I would say it's a safe bet that none of us here are. But I mean, it's fine. But when you're trying to do that and weave in a narrative, like you said, of continuity.
Well, you've told people, you've told your audience this is part of our grand plan, and it just doesn't seem to be. It's like a meatloaf that isn't. It's like a meatloaf that isn't held together. It doesn't have anything in it to bind it. It's just kind of a massive.
Somebody left the egg out.
There's no eggs. Exactly.
Think about the WandaVision. Like that's the only show so far that's been connected to at least Doctor Strange.
It felt like it had serious consequences, building and emotional tangibility.
But they still completely disregarded that Vision might be back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. What happened to that? Where's that going? Where'd it go?
I don't know.
I think What If was played in the animated show.
True.
Was pretty well done and worked well with the multiverse thing.
Yeah. What really upset me about the multiverse, I'll turn my mic off after this, but just the fact that they let loose on every single universe that was in the Doctor Strange multiverse just in the trailer. Oh yeah. Like it was really just a two setting movie, and they alluded to it being, hey, we're going to be all over the place. We're going to be jumping from world to world. Yeah. And it did not feel that way at all.
I remember 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of there was a slide. You remember the TV show Sliders? There was a reference to that at the stoplights and how they were done. That's actually from the show. That was a nod to that. But I think that when you do say something like, you're going to do a multiverse of madness, I'm thinking like a Quantum Leap type of show or Sliders type of show. And to what you just said, we got 3, the planning on that. And so the marketing is saying one thing to get the audience in, but the experience is, and this is actually relevant to everybody out there listening going like, what the heck does this have to do with anything?
Nope, you're right.
If you really listen and notice the tone of the show, what we're talking about, what I'm driving at is even the big boys struggle with this.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's not a budget thing, which does tie back to Forecastr.
It might have something.
I'm getting there.
This might have something to do. Some of it might have, like I said, some of this kind of lack of follow through or stumbling may have something to do with the Disney aspect, and it could have something to do with budgets because there have been whispers by some of the critics about the look and feel of Love and Thunder was a little less polished,
really,
than some previous films.
Well, it was really weird. They interviewed Taika Waititi and another lady that was in the show, or one of the producers, and he was cracking on the special effects pretty hard.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw that clip.
And that's a little jarring, I mean, it's his movie.
Yeah, they're talking about Korg.
Yeah, and it was just like, you want to do this while you're out, like what Robert Downey Jr. used to call selling soap, is where you go out and like promote the movie, and that's your promotion. Well, this part sucks. Look, that's sort of the tone that was taken. It's kind of very strange. But every film has been $200 million, except for the Avenger films and Endgame and all those. But the budgets to produce them and market them has been $200 million.
Really?
So I don't know what the budget for Love and Thunder was. I don't know I haven't looked at this phase in many of the movies, but you can actually pull that information up and find it.
Not to keep us on this topic so we can get back into the topic at hand, but the thing that was most interesting to me was as offbeat as the previous Thor film was with the same director, as completely different it was than everything that came before it was, it still somehow managed to work.
Yeah.
Or work better. Okay. I'll put it that way. It seemed to work much better. But yeah, it's just
But for me, like, you're going to release all these films and you're going to spend $200 million on each one. I look at you and what you're doing Forecastr, and I'm like, you've got to think about how is that tracking,
right?
And how do you track that?
Sure.
And you're not going to do that with Google Sheets. You know, I'm not trying to say like, hey, Disney, call Mitch P. Or don't call him Mitch P. But, you know, call Forecastr, you know. But it's like you kind of have to look back at all of that investment and kind of see if it's going on upward or downward trend.
Yeah.
Is it making money, or is it just like, you know, doing a thing for the sake of doing it, you know?
Over time, and then individual movies, like back to the Multiverse of Madness, like the first 30 minutes, that was a very promising movie. Like that's when all the CGI was in. There was actually a Multiverse of Madness, and then it stopped. Like, and they did a really good job of hooking everyone in, and then it just kind of blanded out. And if you forecast out multiple movies, maybe that's where we're missing like that continuity, because they're not looking too far ahead and saying, how are we going to connect? Like, what are we driving towards? Like, how far ahead would they have had to have planned to actually create that feeling in the Avengers? In that, what was that, phase 2, phase 1?
It's about all the way up to 3, and I mean that was a 10-year investment.
Yeah.
With Feige and Favreau, and it was just like, it doesn't feel like that's the case. It doesn't feel like that there's an apex or a point anywhere.
Well, again, you don't have that Thanos Infinity Stones.
Yeah. I feel like
kind of subplot that seems to be weaving its way through all of these.
Yeah. I do want to say though, by the time this episode comes out, I feel, because San Diego Comic-Con is coming, I feel like that by the time this episode comes out, you know, they're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel is. So for all I know, and all any of us know, they're going to be like, here's Galactus, and we're all going to be like, and then, you know, everything we're saying is like, those guys don't know crap. But they are holding back quite a bit for D23. They're going, I mean, that's really Disney's.
Yeah. that's their real launch platform.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's coming. So everything we're saying right now may just be completely bunked coming up.
We'll see.
After San Diego Comic-Con.
We'll see.
I think it's next week or something, I think. Or is it this week?
No, it's at least next week, if not a little after that.
Yeah.
But it's close.
Yeah. Well, if it is all wrong, then we'll all be happy because we're great on Marvel movies. And if it's not wrong, if we're right, then we're right. We get to be right. So.
I mean, there's no question. Something's different.
Yeah.
Something is different.
Yeah. Well, when you're trying to gather an audience, make sales, as Disney is doing, because the theater, those are sales, online subscriptions, those are sales. And getting back to that is something that, Mitch, you enjoy. Mitch P, I should clarify, MP. This is really like a train wreck in a way for that, but it's all kind of fun. Do you have a process or a sales tool that you recommend or want to share with people?
Yeah, for us, we're a product. I mean, we're a SaaS company, and we still need to hop on a call. I mean, it's a material expense for a startup to work with Forecastr. It's affordable, but for a startup who maybe hasn't raised any money, it's a material expense. So our process is, you know, we funnel people through a survey, and then we hop on a call, and usually it's like a 30-day sales cycle. So it's not like it's a B2B product, so it's more hands-on than like a B2C process. For us, tools wise, like I love HubSpot. HubSpot's great. We have ours set up really well and automates a lot of things for us. But to tie that back to ticket sales and how they manage, yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes to brand and product, and like understanding how much your product can sell for you and how much your brand can sell for you.
Right.
Brand for us, brand does we have a great brand, and a lot of people come to us and already trust us and know that we're credible. And then it's just a matter of me letting the product kind of sell itself. So I'm very lucky in that. I have a great brand and a great product to sell. If you don't have those two things,
it's a lot more work.
Hard.
Yeah, it does make it difficult. I mean, that's the thing that we've been trying to convince people, because branding and marketing kind of they do overlap, but it depends on the situation. Yeah. Brand, in our opinion, brand comes first, because you have to define what it is you're going to say, what's going to go on the ad, what's going to go on the website, down to the pictures, like everything visual needs to be fleshed out and done correctly in order for that to get to that stage that you're talking about, MP, that works.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it makes it for a very difficult sales, and your salespeople are just going to be struggling hard and yelling at marketing, and marketing's going to yell at sales, and all that starts up, you know. So, no, I appreciate you coming on the show and chatting with us about monies, which is a little over my heads, but it's fine. And then also diving into a bit of the MCU stuff because I was actually watching some of that last night and trying to get into the reviews because I myself have not seen it either.
Yeah.
And to your point about the brand thing, I feel like this has hurt Marvel's brand. I've said before, I've always had this moment in the previous phases where I was comfortable when a movie came out. I didn't need to see a trailer. I was going, you had my money.
Yeah.
Now I'm watching the trailers, I'm watching the ads, and I'm watching very closely to reactions because I'm like, that $12, $15 is either gas or it's going to be entertainment to unwind.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? I didn't really care to see Top Gun because I felt like that was just nostalgia. But now I'm like, if I had to compare Thor and Top Gun, I'm hearing maybe I'm going to go see some Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I mean, people are still raving about the new Top Gun film. They're still gaga over it.
Yeah, it's shifting now. It's like, which I'm okay with, that not everything is a comic book movie, blah, 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 because that's all we have for over a decade. Yeah. I'm glad to see some other stories. I'd like to see some more original stuff and not like sequels that should have happened 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah. And if not that anybody is from this place is listening, but please leave Back to the Future alone. Do not relaunch, redo, make a sequel. Just leave it alone.
They're doing it. They're doing a stage performance. That's all they're working.
I don't.
Oh, really?
I don't want to know how Marty McFly and Doc met. I don't need that.
It's going to Broadway. I think.
Yeah.
Anyone else feel like they're seeing some Indiana Jones smirk like pop up?
Yeah, because he agreed to another one.
Oh, they are definitely doing one.
They're working. They've been working on another one, and Harrison Ford just turned 80.
Wow.
For a guy who stood in line the opening day of, not the first, I guess maybe I did the first one. It's all kind of blurring now. Think that guy is now 80 years old. It's like, really?
Yeah, it's like they say.
How old am I now?
Age is a number. You're going to be our creative director, Mitch, for a very long time.
That's fine with me. That's fine with me. If I can have the kind of longevity that guys like Harrison Ford have had, then hey, I'm in good shape, man. I'm just a kid then. A wee bairn.
He'll be Indiana Jones at 80. That's impressive.
Yeah. When is your ideal age to be like, I'm done? I know what mine is, and I passed it 10 years ago, but I'm just curious.
I have an age and a number. I'll say my age is hopefully 35. Like, that would be awesome. And then everything's passive,
Yeah.
And I'll still keep doing things. I think the goal for me is to be a consultant and advisor and then travel the world and just get on the phone with people and be like, hey, you should do this and that. And just kind of point fingers and help there.
That wouldn't suck.
Yeah, it wouldn't suck too bad.
Well, honestly, I mean, that's kind of what's happening with me and with us. I mean, it's just sitting in that role of like, what do I do? And then providing some guidance and then taking a little bit of revenue on that so that I can buy groceries.
Yeah.
I mean, it is sort of getting it. We are in a time, all of us in this room, I think, because we have done this for a while. We know things that other people don't, and those people are coming into market, and they're kind of like, we don't really know what to do, or they don't know like who to go to anymore. So it is kind of a time to kind of pay attention to that. The consulting is not just a very narrow market thing,
Yeah.
It never was.
Well, I mean, the ability now for people to start up their own thing, to build their own business. Even though right now the economy isn't in the best of health, maybe, but
maybe
I'm just trying. Well, I'm just trying. I don't want to lean in too hard because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Sure.
Right.
But there's never been a better time for people that have a great idea to bring it to the marketplace, because now you've got so many tools at your disposal to do it.
Yep.
And Forecastr is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it started with the internet, okay, which gave people access to so much information and tools and resources. Forecastr is another step in that the evolution of that wave.
Yeah. A company like Forecastr, I'm actually surprised it took this long for something like that to show up.
Yeah. I totally agree. I'm surprised there isn't a winner out there already where there's a de facto solution. So that's obviously our goal. But to that too, starting a company right now is easier than ever. I mean, Zoom. Like when else was that the norm? Like you were lucky to get a phone call and talk with someone. Everything was done. Business was done email. Business was done on the phones. Now I can get on a Zoom call, talk with someone in San Francisco, talk with an angel investor out there, and feel like they're in my backyard.
Right.
You could not do that really even 3 years ago. It wasn't the norm. People would email someone, hey, here's a Zoom link. What's that? Give me a call. And you can't build that same relationship. You can't be face to face. I mean, people can't take that for granted. We are in unprecedented times when you can do that. Sit down face to face with people all across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, if you enjoyed this episode of the NerdBrand Podcast, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe. Also, coming up, we are going to be working on a series, the 5 senses of the brand. Taste and smell and sight and what the other ones are that, whatever. We all know what the 5 senses are. But, yes, those do apply to branding. And, imagine you eat a chicken sandwich and you don't know what chicken sandwich it is, and you eat another one and you're blindfolded and you're like, I think that one's McDonald's, and that's not. It's Chick-fil-A, maybe.
It won't be hard to figure out.
Yeah, not really. McDonald's won't be.
That's just me talking.
Yeah, their chicken sandwich will not be a part of the group.
Are you gonna do anything with the 6th sense though?
ESP.
Now we're back to Doctor Strange.
I have thought of that, actually. Thank you, Robert, for chiming in. I have actually thought of what would be the 6th sense of the brand, but I don't really know yet. So there's your opportunity out there for our listeners to send ideas and comment on Facebook about that when you see the post of this episode with our friend Mitch from Forecastr. So we want to thank you for being on the show. You can find this episode at nerdbrandagency.com/podcast, or just go to nerdbrandpodcast.com. Yes, there is a URL for it. Right now it does go to our page on our agency site, but keep an eye out for some things coming up from NerdBrand. As someone told me from a certain chamber, you guys are always doing stuff. That's probably I'm sorry, Josh. I didn't mean to make that a really bad impression of you. But anyhow, I want to thank everybody for listening. You can go check us out everywhere at NerdBrand Agency as the handle online. And remember, keep your Nerd brand strong.